Support for podcasts comes from Milwaukee School of Engineering Center for Professional Education, offering courses in AI machine learning, project management, and more. Program information at msoe.edu/CPE.
From 89.7 UWM Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Today, we'll learn about the Milwaukee Community Land Trust and how it could be one solution to the systemic housing issues in the city. Then, we'll learn about UW-Milwaukee's decision to end its atmospheric science degree program this year.
I'm so tired of waking up every day wondering what classes are being offered. Why is there no communication? And then I turn to the news and they're like, hey, your entire livelihood, your entire passion, probably going to be gone by the time you graduate.
Plus, the executive director of Milwaukee Film sits down with legendary filmmaker Susan Seidelman to talk about her work.
Film festivals are really important because it really has so many people, especially, film students and indie filmmakers have launched their careers due to film festivals.
All that's coming up on Lake Effect. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're highlighting some of our top stories from 2025. We'll start with Milwaukee's housing crisis, something WUWM has been following all year long. The average price of a home in Milwaukee County rose about 8% since last year. Even with a stable job, buying a home feels out of reach for many. But why is housing so expensive, and what can be done about it? WUWM series Seeking Solutions, Keys to Homeownership digs into systemic housing problems in Milwaukee and sheds light on solutions. One emerging solution is the Milwaukee Community Land Trust, which offers homes under $100,000 and a fixed appreciation rate to keep that home affordable long-term. The organization is new and has just 9 homes in its portfolio as of this summer. As Lake Effect's Sam Woods explains, the model isn't a perfect solution to solve housing affordability, but it is built on decades of nationwide experience, proving to keep individual homes affordable forever, and it reveals truths about why homes are so expensive in the first place.
Jeanette Torres was born in Milwaukee and raised around Mitchell Street on the city's south side.
I actually remember walking with my grandma up and down Mitchell Street when it was so beautiful and vibrant, and they would have festivals, and, we would go and get materials that she needed because she did a lot of sewing at home and cooking. And
so after recently moving back to Milwaukee from California, she wanted to buy a house in the neighborhood she grew up in. She was renting in the neighborhood, and her landlord was looking to sell. She asked to buy the house when he was ready, but it didn't happen.
He sold it from under us. So we had 60 days to get out in the winter.
What Torres wanted was stability, a home that she could raise her children in and eventually pass on to them. Bonus points, of course, if it was in the Mitchell Street neighborhood. And after a couple years of taking classes, saving, and building credit, she was introduced to the Milwaukee Community Land Trust.
And they told us about a house that was available. It wasn't going to be ready right away, but there was potential there. And when I heard the neighborhood it was in, I felt like that was immediately, it was like a fit.
The house was perfect for her family, in her desired neighborhood, and crucially, it was affordable. Founded in 2017, the Milwaukee Community Land Trust model centers around a lease agreement between the land trust and the home buyer. The agreement is that the trust retains ownership of the land, while the homebuyer retains ownership of the house and improvements. So far, the trust has sold 9 homes under this agreement. As the Milwaukee Community Land Trust Executive Director Lamont Davis says, because you're just buying the home and not the land, the price is far cheaper than most homes on the market.
Most of our homes that have sold are somewhere between $60,000 and $90,000 of the 9 homes. So that's affordability, but we also need them to be durable. We need them to have mostly free from defects, free from major repairs in the next 10 years.
There are a couple other rules as well. Owners or one of the family members need to be occupants, meaning the home cannot be converted to a rental property. And when the owner wants to sell, they agree to sell the unit back to the land trust at a 1.25% appreciation per year.
Other than that, we don't have any onerous rules. We lease the land to the homeowner, but they have the right to quiet enjoyment. We're not there as a landlord to say, hey, we didn't see you cut the grass, and we're not an HOA or any of those kind of things. Once you buy a home, it's your home.
Because of the fixed appreciation rate, buyers do, in theory, miss out on some wealth building. According to the Wisconsin Realtors Association, home prices have jumped about 8% in Milwaukee County since last year. This makes homes sold in conjunction with the land trust less than ideal for those looking for an investment property. But as Dr. Vince Wong, a University of Wisconsin researcher who has studied community land trusts, explains, the community land trust model allows people who wouldn't otherwise be able to buy a home to get a foot in the wealth generation door. And sometimes they end up moving on to market rate housing anyway.
About 60% of community land trust homeowners, when they sell the house, they will go on and purchase market rate unit.
But this trade-off between affordability and maximizing wealth generation is where community land trusts start to reveal underlying truths about our housing economy. If you are told that the key to personal wealth generation is buying a home, then you're going to want to see that home's value increase, ideally as fast as possible if you can afford the corresponding increase in property taxes. And if you can, you're promised a big payout whenever you decide to leave. But if the price of a home is always going up, that means, by definition, that home is more expensive for the next buyer. Dominique Merriweather is the executive director of Proud Ground, a community land trust based in Portland, Oregon. As difficult as it can feel to buy a home in Milwaukee, where the median home price is around $200,000, Portland is on another level.
Like our median home price is around $570,000 to $580,000, and so it's like, who has $160,000 just laying around for down payment when you're also putting kids through school, maybe paying off your own student debt?
Proud Ground was founded in 1999 and currently has 614 homes in its portfolio, both in the Portland area and a few other counties in outer Oregon. Merriweather explains that Proud Ground primarily serves people who make below the area median income. For a variety of factors, this often ends up being Black and brown first-generation homebuyers who have historically been legally or financially shut out of the housing market.
Income qualified, and then from there we look at just groups who have been underserved. And in Portland, we've had redlining. Redlining was a part of our title records, just all the different things that go into like who can own and who can't own. And so our history here in the West and in Portland is very explicit around who could and who couldn't have ownership. And also there was a lot of eminent domain and other aspects from the government that really pushed Black and brown folk out of community. And then after that became like this speculative housing market that really created a lot of gentrification in neighborhoods that were historically Black and brown.
In economic lingo, the term speculation refers to purchasing an asset with the hope that its value will increase in the near future. In the United States, speculation has historically gone hand in hand with real estate, whether that is purchasing a field in Oklahoma hoping to find oil, or purchasing a townhome in an up-and-coming neighborhood in Oregon. What Merriweather reports from Portland is a speculative market out of control, where housing is primarily a vehicle to generate wealth. Merriweather is under no illusion that affordable housing or community land trusts solve everything, but he does see the need for a paradigm shift when it comes to housing. Merriweather's vision is that we get back to basics, where housing is treated as a place to put down roots, not just a speculative asset.
Yes, there is this righting of the wrong, but home ownership alone isn't going to do that. We're just likely to be a piece of the puzzle. Our focus is really on ensuring that communities have assets that are taken out of the speculative market so that the whole community can benefit. For us, it happens to be home ownership.
Here in Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Community Land Trust Executive Director Lamont Davis sees the West Coast as a cautionary tale for what's coming to Milwaukee and a call to action to ensure affordability now and stability for the future.
In Milwaukee, real estate is relatively cheap. When they hear about the price points that we're selling units at, 60 to 90,000, they can't believe that. They're like, someone needs help to buy a home at 60 or 90,000, but we have to intervene before affordability leaves us. And we're like the West Coast, where you're trying to buy a 3-bedroom that's $1 million. You know, who can do that? So I think it's perfect for us to be intervening now, because we don't want this to grow into a bigger monster where no one can afford home ownership.
So, does this mean that community land trusts solve housing affordability? Not entirely. For one, help is needed. Here in Milwaukee, our local land trust relies on partnerships with other organizations for funding, home loans, repairs, homebuyer education, and financial planning. The organization also currently relies on donations and public grants to cover the difference of buying a home at market rate and selling it at an affordable rate. This need for partnerships to cover other aspects of the home buying process and the need for capital to buy homes out of the market means that community land trusts are likely not going to upend housing market principles immediately. After 26 years, Proud Ground in Portland has just over 600 homes in its portfolio. And here, since its founding in 2017, the Milwaukee Community Land Trust sold just its 9th home this summer. So progress is seldom instantaneous. And as Dr. Vince Wong notes, housing affordability is a complex issue, and land trusts are just part of the solution, not a silver bullet.
Yeah, the short answer is no, right? There is no single housing solution policy practice program being the silver bullet. We are living in the ecosystem of what we all usually call it the housing spectrum of housing or spectrum of affordable housing. Community land trust is just one type within that spectrum in a society where the affordability issue has been getting worse, right? So one model is not enough.
But there is also growing evidence of success for this housing model. In Portland, Meriwether reports that its portfolio of around 600 homes has shown remarkable stability before, during, and after the housing market crash in the late 2000s.
Proud Ground hasn't lost a home to foreclosure ever.
Dr. Wong notes that community land trusts in the United States achieve their goal of attaining affordability in perpetuity. His census of over 300 land trusts nationwide found evidence that not only is the initial home buyer of a community land trust home buying at an affordable rate, but future buyers of that home also enjoy affordability.
We also look at the subsequent sales over time for future home buyers, and we check the affordability pretty much kept the same level for the same households with income levels. So that gives us another confidence saying this perpetual affordability is retained in the model for the future generation of buyers.
Locally, Lamont Davis sees evidence of success in the fact that people who make as low as 30% of the average median income in Milwaukee can still achieve stability through home ownership.
We're serving very low to moderate income households that sometimes people write off and say these households should not even be into home ownership. They won't be able to make it as homeowners. And we've proven that we can serve people as low as 30% AMI, which is right on the cusp of being homeless when you look at the definition of that.
The vision, in a word, is stability.
At the end of the day, we're not just developing housing, we're developing stability, we're developing community, we're building a future where families can stay rooted, pass something on, and feel secure in their tenure. Our model works because we really focus on people, not speculating. We're not trying to be the market-based solution. We're trying to be the solution for people like Jeanette.
And on Milwaukee's South Side, we return to Jeanette Torres. We met her at the beginning of this story as she remembered walking down Mitchell Street as a child. She moved to California for a bit, finding she was priced out of a home there, moving back to Milwaukee, only to be kicked out of her rental unit by a landlord looking to cash in quickly on rising home prices here. Now, her and her family have a place that is theirs. She knows where her kids will go to school. She knows who her neighbors are. She knows who she can go to borrow a lawnmower and who can help pick up trash when the snow thaws in the spring. She has stability. She has roots. She has a home in Milwaukee.
I just wanted to say that I am grateful for the Milwaukee Community Land Trust because they not only gave us keys, but they gave us hope and stability. And a future that we can build on with our children. If you're out there and you feel like you can't own, don't give up. It's not impossible. There are people and programs like MCLT out there here in the city that are willing to help and put in that work with us. That's all.
That piece was produced by Lake Effect's Sam Woods. For more information on Community Land Trust, head on over to WUWM.com. That story was a part of our Seeking Solutions Keys to Homeownership series. Support for the series comes from presenting sponsor Educators Credit Union. You can find all of our coverage in this series at WUWM.com/housing. Black homeownership in Milwaukee has been a focal point in the city's continued struggle with racial equity. A 2022 report by the Wisconsin Policy Forum found that the city had the lowest rates of Black and Hispanic homeownership among 10 peer cities. But Milwaukee isn't alone in this struggle. There have been many historical and current factors that have undercut Black Americans' ability to buy and keep their homes. A new book called Plundered: How Racist Policies Undermine Black Homeownership in America explores the obstacles facing Black homeowners by following two families in Detroit, Michigan. Bernadette Atuahene is a professor of law at the University of Southern California Gould School of Law, who specializes in poverty law. She joins Lake Effect's Joy Powers to explore how these policies impacted Black homeowners in Detroit and throughout the nation. Atuahene begins by explaining the premise of the book.
Plundered is really the story of two grandfathers who were once poor sharecroppers in their native lands. Both came to Detroit to work at the Ford Motor Company's River Rouge factory in the early 1900s. One, Grandpa Bucci, was white and came from Italy, and the other, Grandpa Brown, was Black and came from North Carolina. And we need to know a lot of these racist policies really began when Blacks started appearing in these northern cities, and racist policies were existent in the South, obviously, but when Blacks came to the North in great quantities during the Great Migration, like Grandpa Brown did, we saw a lot of the racist policies in the North. Everyone was coming to River Rouge because it was, $5 a day, but it was also one of the Ford Motor Company's dirtiest and most dangerous factories. But the job helped these two men and their families escape poverty and really enter the middle class. So although neither grandfather had an easy life, my book, Plundered: How Racist Policies Undermine Black Homeownership in America, goes through how racist policies affected the Black grandfather's ability to pass along wealth to his grandchildren, while the Italian grandfather and his descendants were allowed to thrive. And the racist policies I'm talking about include racially restrictive covenants, redlining, blockbusting, urban renewal, predatory mortgage lending, and most recently, inequitable property taxation, which we can talk about more in a minute. And I call these racist policies because they are written and unwritten laws and processes that produce or sustain racial inequity. And racist policies exist regardless of intentions. So although Plundered begins with Detroit and the Ford Motor Company, it's not just about Detroit. It's a national story about how racist policies undermine Black homeownership in America.
As you say, some of these things were explicit when we're talking about racially restrictive covenants, when we're talking about redlining. As these two men were really first starting out in their careers, what were the policies that were dictating where they were able to live?
Yeah. It's so many. So Grandpa Bucci, who again, he was a sharecropper from Italy, in no way had an easy life. When he left Italy after the Great War, he went first to the coal mines of France before he came to River Rouge. And he even had one of his fingers cut off, working in these factories. So he in no way had an easy life, but at no point did he have to deal with racially restrictive covenants, which prevented him and his community from occupying certain homes in the suburbs where the houses were cheaper, bigger, and they had better amenities. Although Grandpa Bucci never had an easy life, him and his community never faced redlining, which is where the federal government drew an actual red line around Black communities, indicating that they were a credit risk. And so this redlining really deprived Black neighborhoods of investment. And so the deterioration you see in the Black communities is an inevitable result of redlining. Although Grandpa Bucci had it hard, he never had to deal with block busting, which is when, because the presence of Black people could reduce values because of redlining, when Black people moved into the neighborhood, real estate intermediaries would then tell white people, you guys better sell and get to the suburbs before you lose all the value of your home. White people would flee. And anytime you sell quickly, you don't sell at full value. And these intermediaries would then resell to Black people, making a nice little profit. And that was a phenomenon called block busting. But the main idea here is the book doesn't tell you, it shows you how these two grandfathers, both of them coming to America at the same time, both of them former sharecroppers, both of them poor, one of them purely because of the color of his skin, does not deal with all of these racist policies I've just articulated. And hence their progeny, their grandchildren, have very different outcomes. In Grandpa Bucci's case, his grandson, Robert Facano, still lives in the house that he inherited from his grandfather. And the home in the suburbs is worth over $250,000. Myrisha in the book, who is Grandpa Brown's progeny, his grandchild, she inherited his house, and the house was worth less than $10,000. The house was not a valuable asset. It was, in fact, a money pit because of these layers and layers of racist policies.
So one of the things you mentioned was this idea of urban renewal. Now, here in Milwaukee, that meant a variety of things. We'll be most familiar with the destruction of the Bronzeville neighborhood here in Milwaukee. What did that look like in Detroit?
Yeah, in Detroit, again, this is happening in Black communities, like you mentioned, all over America, Detroit, Milwaukee, Philly, Memphis. What is not acknowledged is these urban renewal programs have the purpose of trying to remove blight. But nowhere in the structure of the program did they acknowledge that the blight that these urban renewal programs were trying to remove were caused by redlining, were caused by the federal government. Because when you put a red line around a community saying that they're a credit risk, right? And then banks and then other lending institutions and financial intermediaries do not then invest in this community, the inevitable result is blight. And so it was the blight created by the federal government through redlining that these urban renewal programs came in to ostensibly try and clean up. But along with, cleaning up this blight, they destroyed entire communities, whether your house was blighted or not, whether your business was blighted or not. If you were in the designated area, your home was torn down, razed, right, to create something new. And what you need to realize is when they raised these Black communities, they not only raised bricks and mortar, but they also destroyed a lot of social capital. When people live next to each other for a long period of time, neighbors become like family. And then you have social regulation that happens when you have thick social capital. And then through urban renewal, communities are then dispersed. And when you have neighborhoods of strangers, you have, violence and crime and distress are going to run wild because you don't have the social controls necessary to put the brakes on that.
What are the stories that really stick out to you that really illustrate how these different things impacted the people at the center of this book?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a lot of people think about racist policies as something of the past, but, they continue on today. And one of the main stories I tell in the book is the story of Myrisha. She saw this yellow bag hanging from her door in 2015. She snatched it down as quickly as she could before her neighbors got wind of what was going on. But when she looked down her block, the yellow black bags were attached to most of her neighbors' doors as well. And in Detroit, the yellow bag is the kind of universal symbol of property tax foreclosure, because this yellow bag provides the legal notice required to foreclose, but it also brings shame because it announces to the entire neighborhood that the homeowner is going through tax foreclosure. So since 2009 in Detroit, 1 in 3 homes has completed the property tax foreclosure process. We haven't seen this number of property tax foreclosures in American history since the Great Depression. So the real question is, what in the world is going on? And I did a study that found that between 2009 and 2015, in each of those 7 years, anywhere between 53 and 84% of the properties were being assessed in violation of the Michigan State Constitution, which quite clearly says no property can be assessed at more than 50% of its market value. And it was the lowest valued homes, like the one that my Risha lived in, that were most affected. And when you think about this again, it's not just a Detroit problem. Detroit is ground zero for a national problem. Nationally, the statistics show that Blacks and Hispanics, on average, pay a 10 to 13% higher property tax rate than whites for the same bundle of goods, which equals about $300 to $400 more per year. But, city officials, when I interviewed city officials for the book, they all explained the property tax foreclosure crisis with stories of personal irresponsibility. For instance, one official said, well, Professor, Detroiters just don't want to pay their taxes. Another said, Detroiters bought homes they couldn't afford. And one official even had the audacity to tell me, Joy, that Detroiters decided to buy purses instead of paying their property taxes. And I interviewed over 150 Detroit homeowners who lost their home through tax foreclosure. And I found that most of them had internalized these narratives of personal irresponsibility. And mind you, people are losing legacy homes that have been paid off, because if there was a mortgage on the home, the bank would have taken it before the local government could. So tax foreclosed homeowners blame themselves for losing mama's house, for losing granddaddy's house. There was so much shame and self-lambasting, Joy, that when the interview was over, I had to call many people back and tell them about my study and about the illegally inflated property tax assessments. I had to let them know that systemic injustice was hidden in the complex property tax calculations. And really, this information allowed them to shift from blaming themselves to focusing on the structural injustices involved. And Myrisha did not have a yellow bag on her door because she was irresponsible. She was up against racist policies, which operate silently in the background, leaving its victims foregrounded and thus drawing all the blame.
There is a program to help people here in Wisconsin with inflated property taxes. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Absolutely. So at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, the law clinic there has teamed up with community advocates in Milwaukee, offering services, because as I told you, this is not a Detroit problem, it's a national problem where Blacks and Hispanics are paying higher property tax rates than whites. And so at the University of Wisconsin, if your home is below a certain value, you can call community advocates, and for free, the program will look at your property taxes first of all. And if, in fact, through number crunching, the program determines that your house is being overtaxed, the program will file an appeal, a property tax appeal, free of charge. And again, the program only serves owner-occupiers. If you're a landlord, this program is not for you. But if you are a homeowner in Milwaukee, and I believe the numbers, if your home is worth under $200,000, please call, again, community advocates, have the program check out to see if, in fact, your home is being overtaxed. And again, they will file the appeal for free.
Bernadette Atuahene is a professor of law at the University of Southern California Gould School of Law. She's also the author of Plundered: How Racist Policies Undermine Black Homeownership in America. She spoke with Lake Effect's Joy Powers. In about 10 minutes, the executive director of Milwaukee Film sits down with legendary filmmaker Susan Seidelman. But first, UW-Milwaukee ended its atmospheric science degree program this year. We'll talk with students and professors about what that means ahead on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. You're listening to Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. This year, UW-Milwaukee's Atmospheric Science degree program has come to an end. That program prepared students for careers in weather and climate forecasting and research. UWM says the program ended this year due to low enrollment and faculty retirements. Its closure comes on the heels of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration facing federal cuts to its research and its staff. As Lake Effect's Excret Nunez explains, that means UWM atmospheric science students are facing the loss of their degree program and an uncertain job market.
The first blow to UWM's atmospheric science program happened in 2023, when the university shut down its Innovative Weather Center due to funding. Innovative Weather gave students real-world forecasting experience. The next year, in spring 2024, UWM atmospheric science faculty warned students that the degree program itself was at risk of closure. UWM Junior and Atmospheric Science Club president Cade Barkis remembers hearing that news. I think my initial thought was just shock in that moment of being told, hey, the program is getting cut. And from there, it was just, okay, now what am I supposed to do? Paul Rober is a distinguished professor of atmospheric sciences, which is part of UWM's School of Freshwater Sciences. He says that as faculty in the program have retired or left, UWM has not hired enough new professors to provide the same level of instruction and research. Because of that, Rober says the faculty voted in 2024 to suspend admissions to the bachelor's degree program. Later, in 2025, they voted to end both the undergraduate and graduate degree programs.
Ultimately, the way the UW system works is the faculty have to vote on the ending of a program. We really didn't have any choice. There was no other option, as long as the university was not willing to hire new people to replace anybody who was leaving.
Rober says the atmospheric science program's small class sizes attracted students, but the low enrollment ultimately worked against them.
We've always really punched above our weight, but of course the university is looking at a metric of how many graduates you produce per 5-year period, and because we're just at the edge of that, they feel like it's not financially viable to keep us going. So that was their decision.
In recent years, UWM has struggled financially due to stagnant state funding and enrollment challenges. According to the university, the atmospheric science program had small graduating classes of about 4 undergraduate students and 3 graduate students each year. A UWM spokesperson said, quote, "The cost to maintain a small program was not sustainable in the longer term, and the difficult decision was made to allocate resources to higher demand programs," unquote. The university did not respond for comment on how much the institution would be saving by ending the atmospheric science program. Student Cade Barkis says UWM told students already enrolled in the atmospheric science program that they would receive personalized advising to help them stay on track for graduation. We were originally told that this year everything would be fine. That immediately fell through back in October. We were told that electives would be taught out, that there was a teach-out plan for everyone, and come to find out they're not offering electives in the spring. 2 faculty members, including Rober, will be retiring, which leaves the program with limited capacity to teach the classes remaining students need. Barkis says a number of their younger classmates are transferring from UWM to atmospheric science programs at other schools, like Northern Illinois University, UW-Madison, and St. Cloud State in Minnesota. And it's not just the closure of UWM's program on their mind. Barkis is also worried about their job prospects after graduation. They recently decided to become a double major in atmospheric science and journalism, advertising, and media studies to give them more career options. With everything that's been happening in the federal news and just a ton of layoffs, a ton of uncertainty, I decided in February that it would be time to jump the gun and get that double degree. As part of the Trump administration's efforts to cut the federal workforce, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration fired about 800 employees in late February, and it's bracing for more cuts under Trump's 2026 budget proposal. NOAA is a leading center of climate research and provides weather forecasts across the country. Dylan Blunt is graduating with a PhD in atmospheric science at UWM and will soon be an assistant professor at Ohio University. He says these massive cuts to NOAA will trickle down to other climate and weather-related fields.
Along with the anger that comes with these cuts, it also comes with knowing that my future will be impacted. I'm not going into federal service. I am starting as an assistant professor, but I do need to work on research, and those come from grants from the government, like the National Science Foundation or NOAA.
Barkis says dealing with both the changes at UWM and the news about federal cuts has been exhausting.
I'm so tired of waking up every day wondering what classes are being offered. Why is there no communication? And then I turn to the news and they're like, hey, your entire livelihood, your entire passion, probably going to be gone by the time you graduate. Which again takes me back to why I decided to start that journalism degree.
They say despite all the uncertainty, they're choosing to finish their atmospheric science degree at UWM.
I think what I've enjoyed most about the program is the relationships I've made with my fellow classmates and the faculty especially. I don't feel like I'd get that type of connection anywhere else. I'm sticking it out because I've always been the type of person to advocate for myself and other people. And I also just love UWM and Milwaukee in general. Trying to up and move my whole life for 1 year, especially now that I'm double majoring, it's not something I want to do.
Barkis hopes one day they can put the training they received as one of UWM's last atmospheric science grads to work.
That was Lake Effect's Excret Nunez speaking with students and faculty from UWM's Atmospheric Science program. WUWM is a service of UW-Milwaukee. We'll take just one more break and then hear a conversation between Milwaukee Film's executive director, Susan Kearns, and legendary filmmaker Susan Seidelman about their work. Keep listening to Lake Effect on Milwaukee's NPR. This is Lake Effect on Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Here at WUWM, we bring together community members and hand the microphone over to them to lead a segment that we call Group Chat. This year, we brought together two Susans of film, Susan Kearns, Executive Director of Milwaukee Film, and legendary filmmaker Susan Seidelman. Seidelman's work includes directing films like Smithereens, the pilot of Sex and the City, and Desperately Seeking Susan, which celebrated its 40th anniversary this year. Seidelman visited Milwaukee to celebrate the anniversary with a screening. That's when we brought the Susans together to talk about everything from being the first to cast Madonna to the power of film festivals.
Hi, I'm Susan Kearns. I'm the Executive Director of Milwaukee Film, and I'm here with iconic director Susan Seidelman to talk about her visit to Milwaukee for the 40th anniversary screening of Desperately Seeking Susan on Saturday, April 26th.
Thank you. And I'm happy to be here. And congratulations on your new job, because the last time we spoke, you didn't have this job.
Yeah.
So that's exciting and a big change for you.
It has been. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It's been really great, actually, being able to be immersed again in the film festival world. So, and to be able to highlight differently all the great work I see about, coming out of filmmakers around the world. So to start this chat, I want to ask you a couple of questions about Desperately Seeking Susan, if you don't mind. It's such an iconic film, and I think a lot of people think about the 80s in a very specific way in terms of like the colors and the fashion and all of that. And it seems like so much of that stems from this film and this moment that you captured in New York on screen. Can you talk a little bit about your creative process for thinking about how the film looked, but also how you came to cast Madonna?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when you make a film, you never think about it that it's going to be a time capsule of a certain period. I like to observe what's going on around me. So I was living in downtown New York and very much a part of that world. And so I was just telling a story about that world as I saw it in that time. And of course, when you talk about the early 80s, we were coming out of a very gritty, the 1970s were very gritty in America, but particularly in New York, because there was a bankruptcy crisis. So suddenly things started to ease up. And I think everyone was, the world was getting a little bit more colorful. And I wanted to kind of capture that. And, I had made a low budget independent film before this one, a film called Smithereens, that was very much about the downtown kind of punk rock scene. And as a result of that, I got to meet various musicians and just people who hung out downtown. And one of them, and I didn't know her very well at the time, but I knew of her, was Madonna. So when Desperately Seeking Susan came around, it's the story about two very different kinds of women and how their lives impact one another. Rosanna Arquette was attached to the project from the beginning. I started to think about who might play opposite her in an interesting but also an authentic way. And that led me to Madonna, since I had seen some of her early videos, like Borderline. And she seemed to she seemed to know how to flirt with the camera. The camera liked her. And I thought that would be a good quality to give to the character of Susan.
It's interesting thinking back. I was trying to kind of dig into my own memories of the film, and I do remember reading about the film in anticipation and seeing set photos of all of the security and everything as Madonna was coming to set or leaving set. People clamoring to get a just a look at her.
Yeah, only at the end of when we were filming, because when we started filming and when in pre-production, she was still relatively unknown. Just a crazy, somewhat fortuitous thing that happened was that her Like a Virgin album came out during the 9 weeks we were filming. And suddenly she went from she was kind of known, but mostly in New York, to being one of the most famous people in pop culture at that time. And it happened very quickly, very quickly.
So can we talk a little bit about film festivals? Again, moving back to Smithereens, first American independent film to compete for the Palme d'Or at Cannes. Congratulations, an amazing accomplishment. And it kind of launched your career.
Well, film festivals are really important. That's why it's wonderful that you are now running this one, because it really has so many people, especially film students and indie filmmakers have launched their careers due to film festivals, whether it's short film festivals where you just get that first audience that recognizes what you're trying to do, and you get to test out whether, often as a filmmaker or a film student, you're working in isolation or you're showing it to a couple of your friends, but you never know how it's going to play to an outside audience. Also, when you get to talk about films with other people who love watching movies on a big screen in a big dark room.
Yeah. I keep thinking about, when I see a film at the Oriental Theater, which I'm so excited for you to get to experience, I'll be in there with 300 to 1,000 other people, and just the vibe of the energy of people reacting to the film, it's entirely different than when I'm watching something at home, streaming online.
Which is why I think film festivals are so important, particularly nowadays, when most young people are growing up just watching, entire movies on their iPhone.
Yeah. I've been talking to people recently, too, about they've been kind of confessing that movie theaters were one of the first places they were allowed to go alone as a kid. And so there's a way in which you feel like a little bit more adult or a little bit more freedom or whatever in that space.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, that's why I got kind of hooked on movies. My mother would take my sister and I to a movie theater that was down the street from the hair salon where she would go to get her hair done. And we would watch, and back then you saw a double feature. Usually they were two horror films, but it was a grown-up experience, and we got to eat all the junk food we wanted to eat.
Yeah.
Yes, for a lot of people, those memories are so much a part of their childhood.
Yeah, we had the similar in downtown Cedar Falls, Iowa. We had the Regent Theater, and on Saturday afternoon they would show just like whatever kids film, and it was like hundreds of kids in there without their. I mean, I feel so bad for the people who were working at that theater, like the mess that they probably had to clean up. But we would all like stomp our feet when the movie was beginning, and just that vibe, I think, really did hook me into the whole thing. So thinking about all of the films that you've made, the television shows over the years, obviously you've delved into women's lives in so many nuanced ways. Are there any contemporary stories about women that you feel like aren't being told right now that you'd really like to see?
I'll be honest. I mean, I'd like to make another film, but I also believe in passing the baton on. And so I'm kind of excited about the stuff that younger generations, women today, not just women, outsiders, of various sorts, are now getting the opportunity to tell their stories. I'm glad I got a chance to tell mine. I still have some more stories to tell, but I'm fascinated by what it sounds like you're doing at your festival, trying to bring in all kinds of voices. Some of that's happening, I guess, using streaming and all the new platforms. But the studio system is still pretty old-fashioned, still pretty conservative. The statistics are, I think in terms of studio, maybe only last year, 15% were directed by women. And I don't know what the percentage was for people of color or the LGBTQ community. I'm not sure, but I'm sure it's pretty low.
Yeah. And one of the things you're reminding me of, too, is the importance of short films. And I think that's one of the things that I'm glad that we can highlight at the Milwaukee Film Festival, because somebody asked me recently, what are the films that I should see to be watching the stories that I haven't seen before? And I started to really think about it. And I was like, I think pointing people to short films, because that's where new voices are able to get their start before they can get the funding for a full-length feature. They can try some things out in, 5 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it is. And for as much as YouTube is, a massive phenomenon, and I watch a lot of things on YouTube, I think film festivals are really still the one place where you can get sort of a curated shorts experience.
Absolutely. I'm curious because I know you made a film recently, a multi-camera film, correct?
We're still working on it. Yeah. But this job has kind of interfered with my own filmmaking. But we're pitching it as like a strange shot on 16 millimeter horror film. And slowly, in bits and pieces, it's coming together. But it's been a lot of fun to make.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, coming from the world of academia and also being a festival programmer, how that relates to actually making a film, which is a very collaborative experience. I mean, the director is the leader of that collaboration and has to keep everyone's vision honed.
Yeah.
But how you navigate that water.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure I figured it out yet, but I'm trying to kind of keep the projects sort of slowly moving forward. When you're working on an independent film, it's like the projects kind of take their own, they work at their own pace a lot of times. So I do think that being a maker gives me a different, I just have so much admiration for every film that gets done. My partner Jay has often said, it doesn't take any less work to make a bad film. And it's true, because it's just so much work and so many voices, like you were saying, so many creative voices coming together to get something done that in some ways, when I'm thinking about programming, it's probably bad because I'm very generous and I'm like, oh, but they were really trying their best,
Yeah. That's kind of the key to filmmaking, I think, and that's tenacity.
Yeah.
So many things that can go wrong, that do go wrong. There's so many reasons to stop making the film.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what I found is you need a strong vision because it is collaborative and there's so many ways you can get sidetracked. So the director, along with the producers and really needs to kind of keep the train on the track and remember why you're making the movie, and that idea of, how you navigate so many egos, everyone has a great creative idea, how you kind of diplomatically encourage people to be creative, but stay in line with this overall vision. So you're all making the same movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember talking to a group of students one time and they were talking about collaboration. I was like, okay, imagine that you're writing a poem with like 50 people. And they were just like, oh, that sounds awful. I was like, well, that's what you're doing,
Yeah.
But it is, you have to, I think it's also about really valuing and honoring your collaborators and trusting that the things they're bringing to the process are,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Susan Kearns is the executive director of Milwaukee Film, and Susan Seidelman is a filmmaker. Milwaukee Film is a financial supporter of UWM. And the Susans wrap up today's show. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. If you've missed any of Lake Effect this week, you can find all of our conversations at WUWM.com. If you'd like to take the show on the go, you can download the Lake Effect podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Tomorrow on Lake Effect, we'll bring some local history stories. One about a plane that crashed on Jones Island in the 1950s, and another about the victims of the Bayview Massacre and the search to find out where they ended up. Thank you so much for joining us today, right here on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.